Welcome to the Crunch Time YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the James Harden to Brooklyn Nets trade that just occurred a few hours ago and all the effects of the trade because it has massive implications for the next 10-ish years. So, probably even further beyond. So, before we get into the video, make sure to like and subscribe and let's get started. So, there were rumors now. This has been circulating for the entire offseason since the Rockets lost in the playoffs to the LA Lakers, that the Houston Rockets were going to at least consider trading James Harden. We know they traded Russell Westbrook this offseason, but they didn't trade Harden. They just held on to him. And he didn't even play in the beginning of the year. I think he missed the first few games. But he played, and he did play a lot worse. It seemed like he didn't care at times. And his teammates didn't really want him there, kind of. He just wasn't putting in 100% effort, didn't feel like the team was good enough to win. And maybe that's true, but there's no point of being on a team if you have no hope in them winning in the recent future. If not all 15 guys believe in the team winning, then it's basically pointless. That's what John Wall had said. But they trade James Harden, and the full trade says they get 8 first-round picks. I'm also going to talk about Victor Oladipo and Karis LeVert. But they traded Rockets traded James Harden, and they got Victor Oladipo, Dante Exum, Rodion Kurucs, 3 Brooklyn first-round picks in 2022, 2024, and 2026, a Milwaukee first in 2022, and 4 pick swaps with Brooklyn in 2021, 2023, 2025, and 2027. And all of those picks they received are unprotected. So that means if that pick ends up somehow Brooklyn, they end up breaking apart in like 3 or so years, and Brooklyn gets the second pick, well, that could be Houston's pick. So that's really big for Houston, as when this core for Brooklyn eventually breaks apart or gets older, regresses, whatever happens, those are going to be some potentially very valuable picks. So now let's get into the full trade. The Pacers, who are also involved, got Karis LeVert and a second-round pick, which I think is really good for the Pacers. They weren't really the biggest part of the trade, but being able to trade VO for Karis LeVert is pretty important. They get more offensive firepower. It's not like this makes them like a top title contender, but really helps improve their team. I also like getting Victor Oladipo for Houston. Probably just fits the team better with where we're at right now. And then the Cavs were also in this trade, and they got Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince. This makes me believe they might be trading Drummond. And 2 teams I think could very well trade for Drummond are the Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics, which are also competing teams in the Eastern Conference. So that wraps up the entire trade, what each team received. Now I'm going to be talking about what this means for Brooklyn and all the other teams involved. So Brooklyn has gone all in for the next 2 to 3 seasons, and if they do not win a ring, this will be the biggest disappointment probably in NBA history of a trio or any single team or group of players. They've given up more draft capital for James Harden than I think any team has ever given up for a singular player, and it's not like they got some bench players back. They just got James Harden. So they did sacrifice a lot. They still kept like DeAndre Jordan, Joe Harris, Jeff Green. So they still have a few solid players, but this really does ruin their depth. Also, they do not have Spencer Dinwiddie, who I believe tore his ACL. He's probably out for the year. And I actually made a video on this on my channel probably around a month or so ago, around before when the season had started, and I said the Brooklyn Nets should not trade for James Harden, and I still do not think this Brooklyn won the trade. I do think this makes them the best team in the NBA, but will they win an NBA championship? I still don't think that they're better than the Lakers. And the Clippers actually match up really good with the Nets. Just looking at defensive matchups. If Kawhi got Kevin Durant, Paul George got James Harden, and Pat Bev got Kyrie. Those are all three really good defenders, and that would cause a lot of issues for the Nets. Obviously, that's just superstar players, not going into everything else involved. But it's not like they're clear contenders, and that's a lot to give up to just maybe be top 3. I also think this is going to probably kill the locker room. I feel like James Harden won't be as much as like a quote-unquote locker room cancer that he's been known to be, considering he wanted to be here. But nobody knows what the heck is going on with Kyrie Irving. Stephen A. Smith said he should retire. That makes no sense, but Kyrie has to be more focused on basketball if this team wants to ever win anything. I actually thought Karis LeVert was a really good bench player for his team. Whenever Kyrie and KD would just not play games, they'd rest or something, he would show a lot of flashes where he could be like a number 2 player on a championship team, or like a high-end number 3. So I think Karis LeVert actually is going to shine on Indiana. I think Victor Oladipo just stays for Houston for however long the contract is. I think he's up after this season anyway. But the Nets need to sign Harden to a long-term extension as soon as possible. You can't give up 8 first-round picks and have a player for like 2 years. That just wouldn't work out. Part of the reason why I think Clippers re-signed Paul George, even if they could have traded him, value is not worth it. But this shows where the direction of the Rockets are headed, and this is actually probably the best case scenario for the Rockets. They have a ton of draft picks in the future, and they're still contending, which is always where you want to be. If you're able to have a ton of draft picks in the future, and your team is still contending or has a chance at the playoffs, that's probably really good for your team. Probably must be great for the Rockets fan base right now. Your team has a chance to make the playoffs, and they also have one of the best futures in the NBA. So those are my thoughts on the trade. I definitely think Brooklyn is the favorite in the East, and I think they will win the East. But it's still going to be an interesting playoff battle. Whoever they end up playing in the finals probably goes to 6-7 games. Would be interesting to see James Harden get his first ring. Other players on that team too. But this wraps up this video. Thanks for watching and have a great day.